as I looked at myself in the reflection here, I had to smile because for any of you who saw this post that I shared probably a week and a half ago or so, talking about looking more and more like my mom, I literally, you guys, and this is actually even her visor. You see it, Edgewood, Tahoe. I'm not in Tahoe right now, but I literally looked at myself and I smiled, and it brought such joy to my heart because just last night I'm here at a place, beautiful place where we used to come as a family, and just to reminisce and I don't know, yeah, just to reminisce. I brought photos of us in this very place across the border, and yeah, and I had some heartfelt moments, you know, just some tears, really missing her, missing my brother, of course. And I'm always sharing, you know, with all of you, just sort of my process, I guess you could call it, my process, really just the reality of what it means to lose. And actually, as many of you probably know, my perspective of losing is really not loss at all. Of course, you can feel those feelings, and that is all natural and good, just as I was feeling last night. Hi, Flamby. But you know, as I said at my Creative Heroine event in March, we don't lose if we don't lose the lesson. So, you know, what are the lessons that we get to learn from loss? And that, of course, is not exactly what I was coming on to share about. I'm coming on to share about relationships and how relationships can help you build your business, how relationships help you build your life, how relationships can actually, so maybe this is really connected, how relationships can really help you rebuild a life that maybe has had some heartbreak in it. But this, you know, this thought that I had around, you know, looking at myself, seeing my reflection, you know, in this live stream and going, wow, I look so much like her. It brought a smile to my face and a very sort of lighthearted feeling, which I was, you know, just happy to have, because it always, as I share with Nolan, my 13-year-old, this one time I was in the car, and some of you have probably heard this story, but I was in the car, and this was maybe like a year ago, and you know, tears started to come, and I let them come. I pulled over, you know, I don't hide my tears from him. I don't hide my tears from myself. I don't hide the range of emotions from myself. The only way, or one of the main ways to actually get through heartbreak and to help yourself truly heal, develop yourself, connection available. You know, one of the main ways I was just sharing to really get through or help yourself with heartache is to allow all of the feelings. So here I am, like tearing up and crying in the car, and then in the next moment I hear a song, you know, after I drove off, and I started to laugh. And Nolan, 13 years old, well then it was probably, he was 12, and he looks over at me and he says, "Mama, you're insane." And I did tell him in that moment what I've told him many times, and that is, Nolan, these are the emotions of life. You know, in one moment you can feel ecstatic, and the other moment you remember someone that you love who is no longer physically here, and you might cry, you might tear up, you might feel, you know, melancholy. And so we've had this sort of conversation always, and last night and this morning has been no different. You know, last night being here where we used to come since I was 12 years old, now not having my mother and brother around, you know, I was sad last night. And then this morning came a different feeling. And the feeling was, again, looking at myself in this live stream, in other words, the reflection, and seeing, wow, I look so much like her. It was fun, you know, it was really sort of lighthearted, and it just reminded me that we can experience it all. And all of it is good. All of it is natural. All of it is life. All of it is being human. It is okay. It is okay to experience all of it. But let me tell you what I'm really excited to talk about. After doing some work this morning, well, some writing and then some work for the branding business that I run, the coaching and the success coaching, the brand coaching and the success coaching business that I run. There are these three things that I really wanted to know: relationships, and I'll name the three, and then if you guys can stay on and listen to the sort of the details of the three, awesome. If you're listening to the replay, awesome. Maybe you want to come back and listen, great. You know, the thing that I have found that continues through grief, through all the through all of my moves overseas, back home, overseas again, that has enabled me to continue to grow the business, specifically grow my business, but even more specifically, even more soulfully speaking, grow myself, develop myself to be able to do what it is that I really want to do in my life, go after the big goals, continue to grow the business, have a great marriage, you know, really feel conscious and really feel supported in my motherhood, has been relationships. And so here are the three things that I really want to share on relationships. Number one, you know, the more that we are able to, or I should say, to be fluent, as I said in the subject line, in order for us to be fluent in relationship, here are the three things that I want to share. We want to really explore our spirituality. I'm going to go deeper into these in a second. Explore our spirituality. Number two, really look at or sort of explore and understand that people are more than their professional experience. They are their life experience as well. That's number two. I will go into that one as well. And then the third is remembering what the word relationship even means. Or in other words, if you dissect, if you sort of cut up the word relationship, what is that first part of relationship? It is relation, right? Relation. In other words, and if you continue to split that up, it's relating. So let me start with that one. So in order for us to be even more fluent in relationship, and just as I said a few minutes ago, you know, having those relationships enable us to continue to grow and develop ourselves, to grow. All right, let's see. This is going to be part two with low connection. So we were talking about relationships, the three things that really help us to grow those relationships, making sure that we understand that the word relationship really comes from the root of relating, right? It's important to, and actually I'll just share what that is and go into the other two. Let's continue to relate to one another. You know, a relationship is not just a one-way street. A relationship is not just a linear conversation. It is a conversation that is made more rich by us actually listening, and by us not only listening but taking in the information that is coming from our beloved, from our client, from our business partner, you know, from whomever it is. So relating is so important. Just remembering the very definition or the very meaning of, you know, of sort of the core part of that word. The other thing that I was saying, and I can't remember exactly where I was before it cut off, but I was talking about, you know, getting to know ourselves, you know, making sure that we really understand ourselves. You know, I called it spirituality a few minutes ago. But it's really, you know, spirituality to me, and I would love to know, like, what does spirituality mean to you? I'm going to give you my definition, and I hope it's useful. I hope you take it and maybe make your own with it, or just give, you know, that it gives you a sort of greater understanding of maybe what spirituality is for you. This is the other thing that really helps to grow the relationships that eventually help us grow our businesses, grow our passion projects, grow and develop ourselves, right? You know, to the being, the more engaged being, the more compassionate human being, the more, you know, the most successful, the most emotionally intelligent, you know, successful person ever. And that is, under the understanding of self that we have. So spirituality for me is a sense of self. It is the practice of having a sense of self. Now you can add, and I do, you can add to that definition the sense of self, your sense of self, as it relates to something greater. Now, why is that important for relationships? Well, the more that you and I, instead of pointing the finger at somebody else, hey, they need to change, they need to do this, they're doing this to me, the more that you and I are actually able to not point the finger at us, but just, you know, sort of calmly look at ourselves, you know, understand being more aware of ourselves. What is our sense of self? And beyond that, what is our sense of self as it relates to something greater in the world? And really from there, just developing ourselves, because the more that you and I get to, or the more that you and I do develop ourselves, we are much more understanding of how other people express, of the diversity, in this world, of, the different and varying levels or degrees of emotional intelligence. We just start to understand the world more. And so life gets easier. Our businesses get more successful. Everything that we want gets better because we are understanding ourselves first. The more that we understand ourselves and the more aware that we become, of ourselves, the more content, the more peace that there is. And then lastly, I was talking in the first, in part one, the first video or the first live stream, about life experience. I talk about this a lot with my clients where, I think for so many years, for most of us, for a lot of us, we are, whether we're in business for ourselves or whether we are, doing business working for someone else, working for a larger corporation, or, again, working for another brand, working for someone else. And really just in life, I think just society and community, and definitely when you're talking about business building and building your resume, we, as human beings, we tend to really see our worth and understand our value through our profession. Now, if we just change that a little bit and say through purpose, awesome. But a lot of times, we look at, again, our value as human beings, and our sense of worth, our sense of value as coming from our professional experience. But what we forget, and what I really am always sort of touting with my clients, in their businesses, is don't forget, let us not forget about sharing your life experience. It is as valuable as your professional experience. Now, how is that and why is that important to relationship building, and why is that important to your building your business, or building or developing yourself? The more that we understand sort of speaking of diversity, the sort of multi-passionate, the multi-dimensional, the multi-faceted people that we are, meaning that our friends are, that our romantic partners are, that our business partners are, that our clients are, the more able that we are to relate to them. You know what I was saying before about the very word relationship. It's about relating. So look at those things. Are you actually relating to other human beings? Are you listening? Are you taking action on what you've heard? Are you developing yourself? Do you feel like you have a sense of self, especially as it relates to something greater? And are you actually looking at your own value as a person, not just based on your professional experience, but also based on your life experience? Now, if we can start doing those three things, and there's probably a lot more, but those are the three things that I've been working with a lot of clients around. If we can start doing, or I should say paying more attention to those three things, relationships get so much easier. And again, I don't just mean the relationships in our family home, in our homes or in our families, although that is true. But I mean the relationships that you and I are building and want to continue to build in our businesses, and the relationships that in our families and in our homes are literally the engine, part of the support system that is pushing our little train that could, up the hills, up and over the obstacles, through the problems, to opportunity and to adventures and to cool experiences and to, creative challenges and different practices and exercises, meaning like life exercises that we all get to do to develop ourselves, to be able to relate better to one another, to really, again, sort of work with these tools, work with these ways of thinking, work with our minds a little bit more, and definitely get way more connected to heart, because that is where the best of not only life exists, but that is absolutely where the best of relationships are. And it is relationships. I have understood this time and time, meaning over and over again. I get reminded, and if I forget, I get reminded, sometimes sweetly, sometimes not so sweetly, that it is the relationships that I keep that are that are the engine, that are the most important thing helping me build what I want to build in the world. They are the relationships that are lifting me up. They are the relationships that make me feel joyful. You know, again, like I said at the beginning of the first live stream, if you haven't checked that out, definitely go back to the first one. When I was talking about my mom and, you know, coming here and making memories and seeing myself, seeing the reflection of her in this live stream, because I do look like her, it puts a smile on my face. Why? Because what I remember about her is how we related to one another, especially in the last 2 years of her life. How much true, genuine relating that there was from me to her, from her to me. And again, just how important that is to develop everything that we've talked about, to develop a sense of self, to really see the value of our life experiences, you know, to relate to others. It's, you know, those three things are literally the backbone of so much of what you want to create. It's relationships. And if you caught, I can't remember if it was a live stream or a written post, about how the number one thing, and there's lots of different research, but there was this one article in Inc. magazine that my husband Josh had shared with me, where I think it was 300,000 people were surveyed, and in other words, yet again, research came out saying that the one thing, or the one secret, right, they said the one secret to a longer life is I forget how they said it, but essentially the focus that you and I have on nurturing relationships, on having community. And so how do we do that? You know, and how do we do that in a way maybe that isn't talked about so much? Like, again, we have sort of the, you know, try these steps to a great relationship, and there's great, don't get me wrong, there's some great information in those articles, but when you're really wanting to think about this maybe from a more philosophical standpoint, from the standpoint of again, of spirituality, whatever it means to you, but hopefully, again, the definition that I gave, maybe that's useful to you, a sense of self. Do you feel like you have a sense of self? You know, I think these are the real questions, and these are the real, I guess for me, sort of real life and sort of up to the minute reporting sort of, I guess, results, you know, in my life that I've had, and that have, through loss, you know, through some really tough moments in the last few years, that have still supported me in building my business and in doing what I want. I remember after Dino passed, I had a friend in the entrepreneurial world ask me, it was maybe like a year after he passed or something, and she wrote me an email or on Facebook Messenger and said, hey, I have a feeling that your business has grown since your brother died. Is that true? And I wrote her back and I said, yeah, isn't that crazy? And the reason why we were both having this moment of, it seems kind of crazy, is because normally when, I think this is the, you know, sort of what most people in society or community feel is that, you know, when you're grieving, when you've had big heartbreak, that things don't grow. Well, it's not true. You know, you think of, you know, I think of driving throughout LA and seeing different parts of LA that they've had sort of controlled fires, right? They literally on purpose will create these purposeful and controlled fires. Why? So that life can be born again. So loss doesn't have to make you feel like you're lost. Of course, you're going to go through the emotions, and grief is a journey, and it does last, you know, a while. I'm still in it. But it was an interesting thing that she said, you know, it was an interesting thing that she brought up to me, where it's just like, it made me stop and go, isn't that interesting? How have I been able to continue to grow the business through this heartbreak? And then again, another heartbreak right after my mom died 2 years later after Dino. And it's mainly one of the biggest things is relationship. And you know what, let's add one more thing, and then I will bid you adieu. I'm gonna go and finish off some work and drink some water. I'm so thirsty. Is the relationship that we have, that you and I have, and the relationship for sure that I know that I have with my mind. The mindset that we have around all of this is just so absolutely important. If we want to grow, we cannot grow, like, we have to have our own controlled fires in our brain, you know, in our head. In other words, we need to figure out what are the thoughts that are not serving us. What are the you know, what are the stories and the thoughts and the perceptions that we have of ourselves, of our old selves, right? But that keep playing over and over again. That's probably, you know, again, let's add that to the most one of the most important things. Really, it's not just those three things, but this could be a fourth. Like, how do we get and stay, you know, fluent in relationship language, or in relationship, and specifically in relationship with, you know, to and with ourselves. It is what we are absolutely saying and continue to say to ourselves. The stories, the mantras that are not so helpful. Mantras are not always good, by the way. Sometimes we can have mantras on repeat for years that are not helpful. So really looking at that as again the sort of the breeding ground of some really good stuff. And you know, I'll finish this thought around having the controlled fires, just like we do in nature, to make sure that things are starting to blossom again and that we give new life, you know, opportunity. Having that be true for our minds as well. You know, how can you and I decide what is really not working in, you know, in this head? What are the stories, and what are the, you know, negative mantras? What are the things that we keep saying to ourselves that we need to have a controlled fire around? In other words, that we need to set fire to, so that new things, new ideas, new creative projects, new purpose, you know, can really grow in our lives. But we have to consciously want it, and we have to consciously set out to create those fires, meaning to put things out that are not useful, and then consciously go out and in the world create fires, meaning you know, creating a spark in our relationships that are, again, the engines of what we really want to do, purpose-wise, business-wise, you know, romantic-wise. It's really it's our relationships that do it. And so to recap, for those of you who just joined, hello. To recap, you know, how do we become fluent in relationships? Meaning just in relationship language. You know, we get better at relating. We grow our sense of self. In other words, we grow into our spirituality. I was saying earlier, spirituality to me means, you know, it's a sense of self, and it's our sense of self as it relates to something bigger. Thirdly, you know, really looking at and honoring the life experience that people have, because we start to see people in a larger, right, in larger value, in larger context. That helps us relate. And then the fourth, which I just added at the end, is, again, this idea of consciously relating to our minds in a different way, creating a different mind, creating a different mind, and therefore a more brilliant, a more rich, a more, you know, able to blossom mindset that's just going to help everything. Meaning, it's going to help you relate to yourself, it's going to help you relate to other people, but really consciously going out and deciding, what is it that I get to set fire to, so that things can blossom, you know, in a whole new way. So from this beautiful paradise to hopefully the paradise that sits always in the seat of your soul, in your mind, in the memories that you have of loved ones, I bid you adieu. I'm sure I will check in as I am away here working and also enjoying myself. And as always, just enjoy your business, enjoy your life, and sending you big love. Make sure to watch the first live stream as well that got cut off or interrupted.